$400,000 you put in on your own money. The remaining 2.9 million is what you earn in interest.
Welcome to More Than Money with your host, Ross Murray. This episode of More Than Money is brought to you by More Time Financial, a financial planning company who are on a mission to help young Australians make smarter decisions with money by providing real-life financial advice, coaching, and financial education.
Mr. Tira Nathan, welcome back to the More Than Money podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
The fans loved you so much, they requested you back for another episode.
Did they really? All 17 of them?
All 17 of them, 1,700 of them. They wanted you back.
You're making big moves in the More Than Money podcast.
They wanted you back. No, the main reason I wanted to get you on today was I want you to assist with my explanation around superannuation. So
Absolutely.
I had this idea of I was going to talk about superannuation because that's what I want to talk about on today's episode. We're in the mix of talking about growing your wealth. So the last couple of episodes we've done growing your wealth through investing in general. Then we talked about investment properties. And then on today's episode, we're talking about superannuation. Now, I thought rather than me just ramble for an hour about superannuation, it might be better for the listeners for me to talk, you ask questions. If I say something that you don't understand, come back at me, ask the questions, because I'm sure if you're asking it, someone else, so one of the listeners is going to think about the same question as well. So I thought that might be the way to go.
That is the way to go, because I actually have questions about
Fantastic.
superannuation, considering I don't have much left.
Okay.
I'm ready.
That sounds good. Sounds good. So as I said, following on from the last couple of episodes, all about growing your wealth, superannuation for most people is going to be one of, if not the biggest asset they're going to ever own, assuming they've been working for a long period of time. Maybe they haven't taken it out during the pandemic, but we'll get to that later. But for most people, superannuation will be one of the biggest assets they'll ever own, mainly because for us, our age, we had super getting contributed for us from the first day we started working, basically. Whereas for our parents and grandparents, superannuation only came in maybe halfway through their lifetime, maybe 3/4 through their lifetime. So for a lot of people at our age, the superannuation balances we're going to have at age 65 are going to be potentially in the millions. Whereas
Millions?
Yeah.
Guys our age?
Yeah.
Or guys and girls our age?
So assuming a couple of things, assuming you have a regular job throughout that working life, though for a 30, 40-year period, from the ages of 20 to the ages of 65, 70, if you're working, for most people, that's what they're projecting. They're going to work for that period of time, and assuming you've been contributing to super that whole time and it's invested appropriately, it's going to be in the millions.
Like how many millions? 1 million, 2 million?
Let's do a quick example, and I'll put up an example of this in the show notes. Right, so what I'm going to look at is a compound interest calculator. Now it sounds super fun, but it's quite important. So let's just do some rough calculations to say you have a starting balance. Let's say you start with 0, and you're going to put in. So what's an average salary? What do you want to use as an average salary?
I would say that I'm probably around average salary.
For most people, let's say what?
70K?
70K?
Yeah, 70K.
So at the moment, the superannuation rate is 10.5%. It hasn't always been that. For us, it was 9.5%, and then it's increased up to 10.5%. So let's just say 10%. 10%. So that's $7,000.
7K, yeah.
$7,000 a year going into a superannuation account for, let's say, you're going to start work at what? So 70 grand from, say, 25?
25. I was going to say 25.
25 until 65. What are we talking? Is that 40 years?
40 years.
40 years. And
2.1 million.
The other thing to consider is the growth rate. So because that money gets invested inside super, which is something I want to touch on, because a lot of people think it sits in a bank account. So it actually gets invested. So if we think of the average rate of return over the long period, historically speaking, if it's invested appropriately, it sits somewhere between 7 and 9% per year.
Okay.
On average.
Yeah.
Not every single year, but on average. That's the historical average.
Yeah.
So let's say 9%. That means that you would have at age 65. So thinking again, we start with 0.
Yeah.
We put $7,000 in each year. So that's someone with a $70,000 salary. And that's not indexed. That means your salary is not increasing. You stay on 70 grand your whole life, basically.
Yes.
For 40 years at 9% return, stab in the dark. How much?
I said
before fees, all that kind of stuff.
I said 2.1 million, but I think my maths would be off.
It's pretty good.
Is it?
It's 2.3.
2.
That is very impressive. You can watch this on the video. He wasn't looking at the camera.
Oh, totally not.
Wasn't looking at the screen.
I said 2.1 million because it's just basic math.
Yeah.
I do work at the casino dealing on the tables, so
That is
it's
quick
not terrible
maths.
maths, but 2.3 million.
That before fees, before inflation, all that kind of stuff, which we can talk about later. But yeah, so that's, again, 70 grand, 40 years. That's assuming you're on 70 grand every single year from when you start working at 25 until when you stop at 65, roughly.
That's incredible.
Pretty wild. So that's why I talk about saying that's likely to be one of the biggest assets. The house, if you own a house, that's obviously probably going to be number 2 or potentially number 1, depending on where you buy. But that's why it is such a big thing to consider that a lot of people our age, until they get to this point, until they get to 30, 32, they don't even think about it.
No.
They don't even worry about it. It's just like a second thought. And it's not the sexiest topic to talk about, superannuation, but it is this thing that for a lot of people, they don't realize it's their money.
Yeah.
That's number 1. 2, they don't realize it's invested. So a lot of people come to me and they're like, hey, I want to start investing. I want to do this. I was like, great. Do you realize you're already investing? They're like, what do you mean? Have you been working? Do you have a superannuation? Yeah, but that's not my money. It's the government's. It's your money. It's actually invested. So that's always the first thing we say to people is let's have a look at how that's invested. What's it been doing? Has it been growing? What are you invested in? What shares do you hold? Like all that kind of stuff, which will get us an understanding. So because it's real, it's your money, we can actually look at it and see what's happened rather than going, I want to start investing for the first time. And so let's look at how you have been investing for the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years if you've been working that long.
That's incredible to me because I've been getting paid super since I was about 23.
Yeah.
When I came home from mission in Ghana, I worked for several different companies, and like you said,
You
it was
didn't get
9.5%.
super in Ghana?
No, I got super spiritual in Ghana. Yeah, the superannuation's a foreign concept in West Africa.
It is.
But yeah, coming back 9.5%, it's now bumped up to, so let's say roughly 10%.
Yeah.
For me personally, I have that same mindset where it's not my money.
Yeah.
Because I can't spend it. Why can't I spend it?
Yeah. That you're asking why you can't spend it?
Why can't I spend it?
That goes back to the reason why they set up superannuation to begin with. So the whole premise was us as human beings, especially in Australia, but also around the world, we're not great at thinking about the future.
Terrible.
We think about the here and now, and that comes obviously survival instincts, all that kind of thing. Is let's make sure I'm okay now. So that's always our initial thought is let's worry about the now. And if I'm alive in the future, great, but I'm more worried about surviving right now. So for a lot of people to have that same thing, it's like, I'm working hard, it's my money, I want to be able to use it right now, which is completely understandable. So the government realized that if people continue on this track when they didn't have superannuation, they realized that people were getting to retirement age when back then they couldn't work because most jobs are physical labor and all these people getting old and they couldn't work, so they had to stop working. They ended up with this workforce that they had to pay a pension to. They had to pay the government Centrelink pension to. And because they had no money of their own. So they were getting to the retirement age. People weren't saving their money. They were just living for the now, as most people do. And they were just spending it. And then they're getting to retirement. Their wage stopped. They've been living week to week, maybe had a bit of savings, but living week to week. So then they had no money and had to rely on the government pension. So the government looked at it and said, this is going to be an issue in the future what we're going through now is the baby boomer period where we have more, or we soon to have more retirees than people working.
Yes.
Up until now, it hasn't been an issue because there was more people working than there were retired.
Yeah.
Whereas because our parents and grandparents' generation, there was a big baby boom, there's less people working than there are that are going to be retired. So then that's more people relying on the Centrelink pension and less people contributing to taxes through work. So they looked at this and said, well, if people aren't going to save for their own retirement, we're going to force them. So they brought in superannuation and said it's mandatory that your employer puts away whatever it was back then. It's been increasing, but let's just say 9.5%, 10%, 10.5% now. So it's been increasing up, but they said people are not going to do it themselves. We're going to make them do it.
Yeah.
So in a way, I get people's thought that they're saying, it's my money, I want to spend it. Why can't I do that? But it is a really good system. And some people might not agree with me on that, but it is a really good system because, as we said, $2.3 million before fees and taxes and stuff. Most people wouldn't have done that on their own because most people wouldn't have the discipline to put away 10% of their savings every single week into a retirement account and not touch it.
So for someone like myself at 31 years of age, that's my thinking.
Yeah.
Is that, no, I never really thought it wasn't my money. I always knew it was my money.
Yeah.
And to give you an example, I knew it was my money when I withdrew it. And this is the topic that I wanted to talk to you about. I knew it was my money when COVID hit.
But I think just to give you that some context.
Yeah.
So that was the one, which again, it will bust some myths today, but that was the one thing that people think, oh, I can't touch it. I can never touch it. COVID rolled around and the government had the incentive was so many people had lost their job we're going to let them access some money from their super to obviously get through. So that was the one exception. And you were the prime example of that, where you actually did lose your job because you were working in hospitality. So, which was directly affected, especially here on the Gold Coast.
Totally.
So you were able to do that, whereas a lot of people did it illegally. They said you can access it subject to these conditions being met. A lot of people did it without actually losing their job to kind of milk the system a little bit.
Really?
Whereas you obviously legitimately lost your job.
I literally had no money. I had no money.
Yeah.
I had no money, which is quite ironic because I've been praying for more money and then COVID hit and then I had 20K within about a year. But I think that point is pretty relevant because it had never happened before, had it?
No.
First time in history that anyone and everyone could access their super.
On that scale, correct. Yeah.
Was that a dumb decision? Or should I have invested that money as opposed to spending it on a big screen TV and kickboxing gear and food, which I did, which I'm sure I'm probably not the only one.
Yeah.
But $20,000 would be very useful today.
Yeah.
The honest truth is that I did spend that money. And to be honest, I didn't just spend it on nothing. I was getting JobKeeper at the time, but the cost of living, it's nothing like it was now, as high as it is now.
Yeah.
2 years ago, the cost of living was still there. And I think from $1,300, I think it was $1,350 it was from JobKeeper, I still needed that super for necessary means. If I could do it again, what would be some of the things that you would advise me to do with that 20,000? Because I know what I'd do now. I'd probably invest it somewhere, but would that be your advice?
That was the thing. So a lot of people were coming to me at that time during COVID saying, what should I do? Should I get it? And should I take it out? And what we saw, here's an example of people using it. One, they illegally took it out because they said, oh, I've lost my job, or whatever the rules were, I can't remember, but they hadn't actually ticked the box properly and they did it illegally. So that was one issue, that you shouldn't have taken it out because you weren't eligible for it. The second one was people taking it out and then wasting it. So when people were taking it out and using it for legitimate means of, I've lost my job, that was the premise. They were saying, okay, we're going to give you this money because you've lost your job. Use it to pay for goods that you actually need. Unfortunately, what a lot of people did was take it out and then go and buy a car. Take it out, go and buy a jet ski, or go and buy some sort of depreciating asset.
Yes, several.
So that was, if I purely put my financial hat on and say, okay, well, you've just taken money out of this thing that's invested. Yes, at the time the share market had gone down, but since then it's recovered. But you're taking this money out of a bucket that is earning money and generating interest through dividends and everything we've been talking about in the last couple of episodes. So you're taking money out of this thing that's making you more money and then withdrawing it and spending it on things that potentially you're not going to get anything back in terms of form of return.
Sure.
So if you took that money out and then maybe helped you buy a house, then that's one thing, because at least it's going towards some sort of asset. If you take it out and just spend it on junk, like nothing, then it's okay, that was a waste. If you legitimately need the money and used it to get by and support yourself, put food on the table, that's a different story. So if I take my financial hat off and say, okay, what was happening during COVID? Everyone was worried, everyone was panicking, everyone thought the world was over. So naturally, a lot of people took the money out of super thinking, okay, there's not going to be a superannuation system, the whole world's going to crash. So fuck it, let's just take the money out and spend it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. In hindsight, I've got a few grand invested in the stock market. It's not enough to obviously retire on, but I think in hindsight, that's what I would do now, is just with a simple understanding of even day trading, buying low, selling high. Obviously 20 grand is probably enough to buy a house back in 2020. That's probably what I would have done as opposed to buying a nice big screen TV and some new couches. They're comfortable. Couches.
So
yes.
I guess if we looked at a couple of myths that I had, I ticked off one already. Number one that I hear is it's not my money.
Okay.
So every time I talk to someone about super, they're like, yeah, I've got it, but who cares? It's government's money.
Yes.
They control it, which they do to a point, but it's not mine. Why bother? Who cares? That's number one. So that's the thing that we like to explain. It's like, it is your money. Yes, you can't touch it and there's rules around it, but it's yours. It's going to be yours. You're able to use it in the future. And then the second one is that a lot of people just think it's a bank account. I think money just goes into a bank account and just sits there and earns like a 1 or 2% interest in the bank account. It's not until we dig deeper and say, actually, this is an investment account. So the superannuation is the platform, is the retirement rules to say the superannuation is a vehicle, and then where it gets invested is the investment options underneath there. So if you think of having a CommSec account or what trading?
Yeah, CommSec. Yeah,
so people have CommSec.
Yeah.
If we replace the word CommSec with whatever superannuation account you will have, Rest, SunSuper, Host Plus, whatever it is, replace that. So CommSec is the platform. Rest, Super, SunSuper is the platform, is the superannuation company. And then where you invest underneath your CommSec account is the investment options.
So they're taking our super and investing it.
Yes.
The banks are.
No, whoever the super fund is.
Okay, so if the super fund is Suncorp,
Yep.
because that's where my super is,
Yep.
they decide where they invest.
Correct. So you.
Oh, interesting.
So this is the thing that a lot of
I
people
didn't know
don't
that.
realize is that it's invested, and then two, that you have a choice of where it gets invested. Now,
You have a choice.
You have a choice. Now, some super funds give you more choice than others.
Yeah.
Some super funds might have 3 or 5 options to say, okay, here's your 5 options. It's a low growth, medium growth, balanced, high growth option. Choose what you want, choose what you would like, and you can invest in one. Or other superannuation funds, you can pretty much invest in almost anything you're available to invest in the general share. So anything you can invest in CommSec, there's some super funds that let you invest in anything that's on CommSec. So on the ASX.
So if I wanted to invest in, let's say, a company like Qantas, I could say put all my money into Qantas.
So it depends what super fund you're with.
Yeah.
Some give you more options than others. So as I said, some might give you only 5 options.
Yeah.
Others might give you 5,000 options. And then some have rules of how much money you're allowed to have in one share. So they might say, okay, you've got 100 grand. You can't put more than 10% or 20% in one single shareholding or one ETF or one thing. But
ETFs.
you can choose.
Yeah.
You can choose what you want to invest in.
That's interesting. I had no idea that you could actually go to the bank and say, hey, listen, I think I
Yep.
want my money here. Do they do it for you?
Yep. And this is where it gets a little bit technical and say, okay, what super fund do you have? So there's industry super funds, which you'd see on the TV. Then there's retail super funds. So they generally have more like different investment options. So there's lots of different super funds out there. And each one is slightly different in terms of where you're allowed to invest, how much control you have. So some, they have a do-it-yourself option where you can literally pick and choose to say, I want to invest in this share, this company, this managed fund, this ETF. I want 20% here, 10% there. You can do as much as you want, similar to day trading to a point.
Yeah.
Others just say, here's your 5 options, pick which one you want, and
that's it.
And that's it.
That's it.
So there's like limited control, and then there's lots of control. There's fees associated. So usually if it's like more control, more complex, there's usually more fees involved sometimes, but not always. But that's the big thing, is people just don't realize it's an investment. It's an investment vehicle.
I do now. Yeah, totally. No, that's good. I had no idea.
The other one is people think that superannuation is only for the wealthy. So they think, I've only got $20,000.
Yeah.
Who cares? I'm going to need a lot more than that to retire. I'm never going to have enough. Why should I care? And using that example before, $70,000 I would say is on average, an average salary. And we're saying you only start working at 25. Most people start working a lot younger than that.
Yeah, 21.
So we're saying you start with 0 at age 25 and you're earning $70,000. So we're not talking about you earning $150,000, $200,000 in the end result. Yes, we're talking about long term, which is always the hard thing. People don't think in 30-year timeframes, which I get. You're like, look at the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet says I'll be a millionaire at 65. It's
Want to be a millionaire now?
I'm poor now. Like, whoa, what do I care about 65?
Yeah.
So it's a hard one. I know it's a hard one to grasp, and it's like the numbers don't seem real when you're like 2.3 million. It doesn't feel real.
No, it doesn't.
But that's the thing with with compound interest is when it's hard to understand, but when you can get your head around the maths, anything that you do consistently for a long period of time, once you start adjusting that interest, so the difference between earning 1% interest money in the bank versus potentially earning 9, 10, 11% interest in the share market or the housing market, it's astronomical what it can do.
Really?
Yeah.
Are there options for us to invest? You probably wouldn't want to because it's a long-term investment.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the thing with superannuation. So you're making consistent investments because you're buying shares or you're investing on a regular basis. So some employers put it in weekly, some employers put it in monthly, some employers put it in quarterly. Depends.
Yeah.
You're putting money into the share market, assuming it's invested appropriately. Now, the other thing is you could hold it all in cash. So I've had some people before all their money is sitting in a cash account. So inside their super, they have the option to invest, but they've put it all into a savings account that earns no interest.
Nothing. Okay.
So that's the thing. It's always a check. But you're putting money in on a regular basis. You physically aren't allowed to touch it except for COVID. Allowed to touch it until you're 65.
Yeah.
So that's why it's such a good system. It has its flaws. It's not the best, but it's such a good thing that you're forced to put money in, assuming you're working, and you can't touch it until you're 65. It's like,
it's a no-brainer.
It's going to grow. So you can see why the government's done it from that perspective. So the idea, going back to that idea that when we get to 65, there's probably not going to be a Centrelink pension to rely on because it's probably going to be exhausted by then.
I think so, yeah.
But the idea is that we've been working from 15 onwards our whole life and getting paid this superannuation, that by then we should have enough to support ourselves and not have to worry about the government.
You'd want to hope so.
That's the premise.
You'd want to hope so.
That's the premise.
Because I can imagine that my mindset at 31 would be very different to my mum and dad's in their early 60s. For example, if I opened my account tomorrow and I saw let's say I looked at my super account tomorrow and I saw $2.5 million there and I can access it in 2 years.
Yep.
I'd be licking my chops going,
you'd be thanking your 20-year-old self.
Absolutely.
Saying, thank God you did that. Thank God you paid attention. Thank God you looked at it.
Yeah. Thank God you kept it there.
Yeah.
As opposed to me at 31 years old. No, I want that 17 grand now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. Oh.
So like, for example, at the moment or the time that I did this research, we have over, I think it's 400 different superannuation funds available. So there's about 400 superannuation accounts out there. And at 2021, so it's a little bit out of date, but as at 2021, the superannuation system as a whole was worth $3 trillion. $3
trillion?
$3 trillion.
At the beginning of 2021?
2021.
Post-COVID?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can imagine that it's probably worth more than that now, depending on what's happened in the share market. But yeah, $3 trillion. So this is huge, because you imagine everyone's getting 10% of their salary, assuming they're employed, not self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's getting a minimum of 10%, 10.5% into this superannuation account. Yes, there's people taking money out when they're older, but it's wild.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
$3 trillion. Yeah. Just sitting there, waiting to be
invested, growing.
Waiting for someone to pick it off at 65. Can't wait to be 65.
And that, again, that's the reason why they set this up, because we just can't fathom.
Yeah.
We want the money now. We don't
totally
want to have to wait that long. So that's the big reason for it. So thinking about how it works, you got any more questions on that?
No, that's fine. No, I'm listening now.
So just thinking about how it works, we've spoken about it already, but the main premise is that you work, your employer by law has to put away a percentage. As we've said a few times already, it's now 10.5%. So 10.5% of your salary has to go into a superannuation account, monthly, quarterly, whatever, weekly, however they want to put it in. So money goes in, it then gets invested, and then it compounds, like we've said. It goes in, it earns interest, it earns dividends, whatever you invested in. So we spoke about the last few episodes, we spoke about different investments and how it works. So if you're in the stock market, you earn dividends or distributions.
Yeah. That
then goes back into your account and it gets reinvested, assuming you've got that set up, it gets reinvested. So then you're buying more shares, and then that grows more. You earn more interest, you earn more dividends, you earn more distributions. It compounds again, and you're putting money. So two things are happening. Money's going in from your employer, and you're earning money through interest or dividends.
Yes.
Assuming you're invested. So then it's compounding, and then that's why it grows. So it's not like we're just starting with a set amount and then we don't put any more money in. Some people just buy shares once and then never touch it again.
Yeah.
And just let it grow, or take the distribution, take the money out.
Yeah.
Take the earnings out. Whereas this, it compounds and it grows and grows.
As the years pass. Shit.
So the idea is that we can't touch it until we reach either what's called preservation age or retirement age.
Okay.
So for people our age, it's going to be, at the moment, it's 60.
Yeah.
That from 60, you can access some of it. And then from age 65, 67, you can access all of it.
So you can take it all out in one hit?
Yeah.
Do you pay tax on it?
Not if you've reached this. If you've reached pension age, then you don't.
So let's say I had 2.3 million sitting there and I reached pension age and I said, I want the whole lot.
Yeah.
You can take it.
More or less, yeah. And again, this is probably another thing I didn't add in terms of myths. A lot of people think that's what they should do. And I talk to people all the time that are of that age. So I have worked in the past with a few older clients, and they're either drawing money out or they reach that age. And people think that they're going to earn all this money, it's going to grow, get to age 65, retire from work, withdraw it all and put it in the bank account.
Is that smart or no?
No. Because again, you're taking money out of this bucket that's earning money, it's earning interest,
and just sitting
and put it into a bank account that earns. At the moment, interest rates are good, but historically it's 1 or 2%.
What are they at now? 11%?
No, interest rates, like bank savings accounts, you might be getting like 2, 3. Term deposit, you might be getting 4.
Okay, yeah.
So it's better. Yeah. Previously, we're getting like 0.1 or 0.5. So.
Oh, it's free money.
So that's a lot of people think that they get to this age and then they're just going to withdraw it all and put it in the bank account. It's like, no, you've still got 30 years to live. You need this money to be working for you for the next 30 years because you're no longer working. So let's say, historically speaking, people get to 65 and retire. Now, people want to retire before then, but that's the idea, that you get to 65. The traditional thing is you work your whole life, get to 65, retire. You get a caravan, travel around Australia, or you go on river cruises and play golf and live the retired lifestyle. Now, to me, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. But anyway, that's what older people potentially done.
Or go to the casino, yes.
Or go to the casino, play the pokies all day.
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of people think. But you think, I've been working and contributing money for the last 30, 35 years into this thing and it's been growing. Now that's going to stop because no more money's going in. So the only thing that's growing is now the interest and the earnings of this investment.
Yes.
So it still needs to be invested. It still needs to be growing to last us another 30 years of our retirement. So assuming you're going to live to 95, 100.
Yeah.
Let's just say you've got 30 years in retirement from
Yes.
65 onwards. So that you need that money to be continually working for you because you're no longer putting money in.
All right. Well, that's another thing I learned because I thought when you get to 65, and take my parents, for example, they're right there.
Yeah.
Now they work for themselves, so they've been contributing super. It makes sense because why would they want to just go, okay, we've been putting all this money aside, it's been growing. Now we want it all back.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily make sense, does it? Take some of it out.
You can take some of it out.
Some of it out.
Traditionally what we find is people get to that age and they might, usually when people retire, they go on a bit of a spending splurge. They might upgrade their car. They might do a bit of renovations. They've got a bit more time on their hands. They might get a caravan. They might go on an overseas trip or they might just spend a bit of money. So we usually find there's a bit more spending there. But then it's a matter of turning on a tap and saying, okay, I'm no longer earning my $1,000, $1,500 a week for whatever from my employment.
Yeah.
I want to take and withdraw what's called a pension. So I want to withdraw a pension from my super on a weekly, monthly basis. So we turn a tap on and say, okay, yes, you can take a lump sum if you want, but rather let's turn a tap and let's replace your salary. So now instead of your salary coming from your employer, your salary is coming from your investments. So you replace your salary every single week.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're still earning that money, but it's coming from your bucket rather than coming from your employer. Because that's the definition of retirement.
Correct.
No longer needing to work. So you have the financial resources, you have the financial assets. So that could be property. That could be your own business that you don't longer work in. You've got employees or you've got a bucket of money. That's shares, bonds, whatever that is. And you're getting passive income. Passive being you're not working for it.
Yes.
So active income and you're working a 9-to-5 job, earning that money. Then a passive investment is a rental property that you've bought.
Yeah.
You've got someone else managing for you and you just live on the rental income.
Absolutely.
Investments, you get dividends and you get distributions and you just live on that.
Yeah. Is it hard to have passive income without having active income?
When you're young, yeah. Because the idea is you need to actively earn that money in order to invest it in things that are going to give you passive income.
Okay, good.
So we've talked about this in the last few episodes, that idea of investing and how that works. But that's the idea and that's the thing a lot of people don't realize is what typically they do is they earn the money through active work and then they take it and spend it on things that don't give them any financial benefit, give them enjoyment. And it might be fun, nice car, jet ski, holiday, nice clothes, all that kind of stuff, which is important to a point as well. But if you actively take that income, put it into assets, property, shares, your own business, whatever that might be, that in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years time is going to start generating income for you. You get to a point where you're getting income from this investment, then you're no longer solely reliant on this active money, this active employment.
Yes.
So you want to get to a point where you can replace your income from active to passive.
To passive. That makes sense.
That's the idea.
And super gives you that opportunity to do that.
In the future.
In the future.
Correct.
Not now.
So that's when we think about investing, we think about it in timeframes to say, okay, we've got our short-term investment goals, medium-term, and then long-term. So if we think of superannuation is one of the best long-term investment strategies for people that are just going to work a 9-to-5, be PAYG their whole life.
Yeah.
If they're self-employed, it's a little bit different, but just assuming you're going to work a normal job, that is your long-term investment plan. Superannuation, you can't touch it. You're doing it anyway. You really don't have a choice because it's going in there.
Yeah.
And then we just need to think about, okay, what's your short-term and medium-term investment plan?
That is a good way to look at it.
Outside of superannuation.
Outside of super.
So you've got your super long-term, can't touch it till you're 65, hypothetically. Then we said, okay, now we've got a non-super investment plan, which is our 10 or 20-year goal.
Yeah.
Super's our 30, 35-year goal, depending on when you start. Our non-super investment plan needs to be our 20-year goal. So that could be property, that could be your own business, could be a share portfolio with whoever.
I understand.
Yeah.
Jeez, this is scary. This is good though. It's good because I'm of that mindset that I'm never going to, I don't know how many people think like I do, but I don't even think I'm going to make it to 60. But by chance, if I do, hopefully I do, but you'd want to have it there. Yeah. It's obviously better to have it than not to have it.
Well, a lot of people just think, well, the government will look after me. The government, then that's what they do now. So if you don't have enough money, you get the Centrelink pension.
So that system in place may not be there when we're 60.
Unlikely.
Really?
Unlikely.
But it's been there for so long, or at least
it's been there for so long, but you just look at the numbers, again, using that baby boomer example.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable when you don't have as many workers contributing, because that's the tax system funds the Centrelink pension system, or the
Yes.
Centrelink system as in general. So
Yeah.
family tax benefits, all that kind of stuff. People putting money into the tax system, a portion of that goes to the Centrelink system,
Yeah.
which then pays for people on maternity leave, helps out with childcare, all that kind of stuff, and then also supports the age pension.
So we take for granted these systems we have in place in Australia.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Superannuation is the prime example of us taking advantage of that. So you talked about Ghana as the example before. They don't have a pension system that you can rely on if you don't work. You don't have money. If you don't have a job. In Australia, like COVID was the prime example, people lost their job. If you had super, you could access it. But if you didn't, you got the JobKeeper system.
Yes.
So no one wants to pay tax. No one likes paying tax. No one wants to pay more tax than anyone else. But if you think about the benefits, and now the usual example is I've been contributing to tax my whole life. I should get a Centrelink pension when I'm older.
Yeah.
Yes, but you've also been getting all these other range of benefits as well. So it's like, that's the price you pay to live in Australia.
Gosh, we're so selfish.
That's the price you pay to live
Goodness.
in a working economy like Australia. There's obviously other places in the world that don't have this system.
Oh, man. See, because for someone like me who's just been, I wouldn't say a worker bee because I'm not out there on a job site, but
Yeah.
I've worked, going on 15, 16 years now. That's almost my mindset is I don't want to pay tax, but I want all the benefits of people who do pay tax.
Correct.
Right now and when I'm retired.
Yeah.
Is that a common mindset to have?
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
Good.
Definitely.
Not good, but good because I'm not the only one.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways of getting money into super. So
Yeah.
we've spoken about the employer one. That's the most common, 10.5% employer contributions. Now, you can put extra money into super if you want. So that's either, they call it employee contributions. So that's salary sacrificing or whatever
Yeah.
that might be.
Yeah.
So you can put it in pre-tax, you can put it in post-tax. There's a few different options there. But that's putting extra money in, and the government incentivizes people to do that. So if you put extra money into your superannuation account up to a point, you can claim it as a tax deduction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So up to, at the moment, $27,500,
Yeah.
including what your employer puts in. So if your employer's putting in $10,000 for you already, you can put in an additional $17,500 and claim it as a tax deduction.
So you can claim 20
So only claim the part that you put in,
that you've put in.
the 17.5 in that example.
Okay.
But you can claim that as a tax deduction. Now, again, the reason why they're doing that is they want to incentivize people just for their own
Yeah.
retirement.
Yeah.
They want to try and give you, so it's less tax. If we compare inside super versus outside super,
Yes.
it's less tax inside super than what most people would pay outside.
Yes.
So if you invest through your CommSec account versus investing through your super account, super's a flat rate of tax at 15%,
Yes.
whereas your CommSec investments are going to be whatever your marginal tax rate is. So that could be 25, 30, 35%, depending on what you earn.
Yeah, I understand.
So that's one benefit. The
Yeah.
second one is you can claim deductions
Uh-huh.
for putting money in, and then it's tax-free when you're older. And then the third way to put money is if you're self-employed, like you mentioned your parents,
Yep.
you can put your own money in. Now, when you're self-employed, you don't have to, unless you're an employee of your own business. So unless you're a registered employee of your business,
Yep.
you don't have to legally put money in. And that's the trap a lot of people fall into.
I don't have to pay super.
When they don't have to,
Yeah,
they
won't.
don't.
They won't. Yes.
So that's
Wow.
something to think about. So yeah, those are the main three ways of putting money in. Employer contributions, employee contributions, that's putting your own money in, either pre-tax or post-tax. So
Yep.
you have the option. You say, I want to put money in and claim as a tax deduction. There's a limit of how much you can do that. And the other option is you want to put it in post-tax. You pay tax on the money and then you put it into super as well. You don't actually claim that as a tax deduction. So it gets a little bit complicated, but those are the three things.
Is there an age that you would advise people to start depositing into their own super on top of what their employers are contributing?
Yeah. So you want to try and do it as soon as possible, but assuming how much your employer's already putting in. One, can you put more in? So if you're earning a lot of money, you can't put more in. But so then you're already putting enough in. But the thing to look at is to say, how much do I want to have in retirement? And then if you run those numbers and say, 2.3 million, like that's a lot of money. That
Mhm.
should be more than enough for most people. If you look and say, that's not enough for my lifestyle that I want to live
Mm.
when I'm that age, then we need to be putting more in. So it's never a bad idea to put more money in, but the trade-off is when you are young, is there a better use for that money now? Now, what I mean by that is not go and spend it, but is there a better way to invest it? So you already know super's taken care of. If we run the numbers and say, okay, from 30 to 65, you're going to be fine.
Yes.
But is there a better way to do something else with that money outside of super?
Understood.
So that's why you think about those time frames.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want to blow it, but
No.
you say, okay, well, you could invest outside of super, but putting money into super is never going to be a bad idea. you're never going to be like, oh shit, I've got too much money in retirement. Like I've got too much money. Like obviously there's having you're forcing all your money in there and you've like got nothing to live on today.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. So you want to try and balance that.
Yes.
Balance those two things. But if you think about, we used the $7,000 example before, this will really blow your mind.
Yeah.
So 7,000
Yeah.
a year.
Yes.
Let's think about 10,000 a year.
Okay. So if you're making
So we
100
got-
grand.
Yeah. So we've got 2.3 million is the example using 7,000.
Yes.
So an additional $3,000 a year is a little bit of money, but it's not thinking heaps.
Yeah.
How's your maths on that one? Still earning 9% for 40 years.
3.3?
3.3.
I overshot it. But
So an extra $3,000 a year, obviously if you're talking about 40 years, which is hard to comprehend,
Yeah.
but we're talking about another $1 million
another $1 million
at retirement.
just for an extra 3K.
3K, obviously over 40 years. But so the crazy thing about this calculation, even the one before, but this one here, 3.3 million is what you end up with. The amount of money you put in, 10 times 40, 10,000 times 40, you put in $400,000. 400,000 of your own money goes in. Now, there's a lot of assumptions here, and I'll put the calculators and disclaimers up after this.
Yeah.
$400,000 you put in on your own money. The remaining 2.9 million is what you earn in interest. Before taxes, before fees, all that stuff, which again is assumptions, but that's the craziness of compounding over the long term.
Are there any other investments like super? No.
This is a key thing. What you just said then is factually incorrect. So superannuation is not an investment.
Okay.
Superannuation is a platform and a vehicle
That allows
where you invest is the investment. So superannuation is your CommSec account.
Yeah.
Underneath there, so you and me could both have CommSec accounts. What you choose to invest in inside CommSec could be completely different to me. So CommSec is the vehicle that happens to hold your investments. Rest, Australian Super, whatever, Suncorp Super, that's the vehicle where you choose to invest is the investments.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I got it
So
now. Yeah.
inside superannuation vehicle,
Yeah.
you can say, I want to put 100% of money into a cash account that earns 1%. That's an option.
Yeah.
The other option is I want to put 100% of it into the share market.
Yeah.
I want to put 100% of it into the property market. So that's where you get all these people who are like, oh, my super fund did this, my super fund did this. I hate the super fund, or my super fund's the best. And you always got to ask the question is, okay, that's fine, but where are you invested?
Where are they putting the money?
Where inside Australian Super are you invested?
Yeah.
Are you in the cash account? Are you in the high growth account?
Yes.
So everyone looks at it and goes, oh, my super's the best. I'm in Australian Super. You should move to Australian Super. That could be the best, but what investment option are you talking about? Because there's 50 different investment options that you can choose from.
See, that blows my mind because I just thought you just put it in there.
Yeah.
And you just leave it there.
Which a lot of people do.
See, I didn't even know what my money's doing.
Yeah.
I got no idea. So you're telling me I have options.
Yeah.
So what I should do, and for anyone else listening, is go home and see where that money's being invested.
100%. Log into your superannuation account, call them if you need to.
Yeah.
And on the web, depending on who you're with, but most of them have a website. You can log
Yeah.
into the portal.
Yeah.
It'll show you where you're invested, how much in each allocation you're into, what the performance has been, how much money you've earned, fees you're paying. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
Everything. Okay.
So
I'll do that
it's
today.
always a really good example of, as I said, when people come to me, they're like, I want to start investing. It's cool. Let's look at your super
Yes.
because you are invested.
Yeah.
It's your money. It's live. It's happening right now. It's not fictitious. It's not like it's numbers on the screen, but it's real.
It's real money.
Yeah. So that kind of goes, we've touched on it a little bit, but choosing the superannuation fund. So
Yeah.
using that example, there's over 400 different super funds available. So the main ones, we've got retail, we've got industry. So industry super is the one you always see on TV.
Yeah.
They spend the most on ads. There's pros and cons of each one. As I said, it'll come down to how many investment options you want to choose from, what insurances you can get, what fees you've got. There's all different options. So some super funds are really good where you can log on, they have a website. Others don't have websites, so you can't see anything. Some send you paper statements. Others, like, you have to call them to get any information out of them. So from that perspective, there's all different ones. There's no one right one. There's some really good ones. There's some really bad ones, but there's no one right one just because there's so many different variables. Your
Makes
age,
sense.
how long you want to invest for, what industry you're in. So there's still some jobs that they make you choose this one super fund.
Yes.
It's a lot less of that now, but those are the main different ones. So you can pick and choose.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how much freedom
Yeah.
you have when it comes to your super.
Correct. So a lot of people just get given one by their employer when they first start,
Deal with it.
and
I
they
don't want to
stick
know
with that
about
one for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
sometimes they go to different jobs and their employer says, oh, this is what used to happen in the past.
Yeah.
You start a new job, they give you their super fund. So then you're with Host Plus, you're with Australian Super, you're with Rest Super, you're with Sun Super.
It's everywhere.
So the most I've had was someone had 15 different super funds.
What? 15?
15. So they had a little bit of money in 15 different accounts. So then it was like, okay, you realize you're paying fees on each one. So you imagine having 15 different CommSec accounts, and each CommSec account charges you $100 a year or $200 a year in fees.
So $1,500.
So you're paying that for no reason. So then we would go through, and obviously the big thing here is so you see a lot of things on TV about rolling over your super or consolidating your super and sorting your super out, which you should, but you always need to be careful before you do that to make sure that you're not losing any benefits. So the trick, or it's not the trick, but the thing a lot of people get stuck with or don't realize is when they close their super fund, any insurance they had inside that super fund will get closed as well and cancelled.
Okay.
So we've had it from so many times before where people have medical issues that we can't get them insurance anywhere else. And they're like, oh, I closed down my Australian super. I'm using Australian super example. That's no particular reason, but they say, I had my Australian super fund and I closed it down because someone told me to. I had 3, closed them all down, just went into 1. But they had life insurance in each of these other ones that got cancelled at the same time. They had a medical condition that they couldn't get insurance for. So then they lost all this insurance.
Jeez,
so
that's
before
rough.
closing anything down, it's important to check as much information as possible. Make sure you know exactly what you're doing or talk to someone before you close it down.
So you could have insurance policies that you lose just because you've changed super.
So that's the thing.
You're not still paying for those, are you?
No. So once it's cancelled, it's gone. But you just can't. So people went, oh, I'll go and claim on it. So you rolled it over, you closed it down 6 months ago. So you lost your life insurance.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Does that happen often?
Yeah, unfortunately. So you see the ads on TV, they're like, oh, you should roll over, or you could call us and we'll help you consolidate your super funds. Yeah, great. That makes sense. You probably should tidy it up. You don't need 15, but make sure you know ahead of time that you're not going to be in that issue be in that example where you lose your insurance and then you have no insurance and you can't make a claim and then something goes wrong and all that stuff.
Totally.
So that is Superannuation 101.
Love it. I think people need to know more.
I think so. We could probably spend an hour more talking about the ins and outs in terms of how you invest, where you invest, all that kind of stuff. But that is the main premise of superannuation. A couple of myths we bust there are you have the option, thing you've learned.
Yep.
You have the option, you have the freedom. You can, to a point, choose where your money's invested.
Yes.
Always important to call your superannuation fund, find out as much information as possible, ask them every question you can think of. What fees am I paying? What insurance do I have? Where it's invested? What the performance has been?
Yeah.
Like how do they compare to against other super funds? What choice and what flexibility do you have?
Yeah, totally. And I think the one thing I've learned is that take it more seriously. No, because I'm serious. I'm going to check it right now and be like, no, if this is my money, because like you said, I've never seen it as my money. Only when they said, oh, you can access it. Okay, now it's my money.
Yeah.
But if you look at the difference, like the example you gave of 400,000 into 3.3 million.
Yeah.
I don't know I know it's long term, but like you said, super is an investment. It's the platform.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I could make that much money in that space of time doing anything else. And that's just my limited knowledge. But I'm sure there's others out there watching or listening that before, I guess, watching this video had that same mindset.
Yeah.
So no, that's the one thing that I've learned. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we wrap up this superannuation?
No, look, God forbid there's another pandemic. I know what I'll be doing with my super.
Taking it out. No. So a couple of things to think about we've touched on already is saying start early.
Yeah.
So the earlier you start saving for retirement. So even if you are putting like an extra $50 a week in or something on top of what your employer is doing, that's going to make a massive difference over the long term. You're already making regular contributions. You can choose to do more as well. So choosing the right fund. So consider the investment options, consider the fees, what other features are available. As I said, there's 400 different superannuation funds at the time of this research. So there's probably more now, but each one has a little bit of difference. So that's what makes it confusing because it is a confusing system, but you need to just ask all the questions. Like we've spoken about the last couple of episodes, it's understanding your goal, understanding your time frame, and understanding what your risk tolerance is. So are you comfortable in putting your money into a term deposit, or are you comfortable investing all of it into a high risk share portfolio? So those are the options. Diversifying your investments, so spreading it across different options is always important rather than putting it all into one bucket. Insurances we've spoken about, so it's important to think about and know what insurances you have inside your super fund before you make any changes. So always call them and ask them. So usually it's life insurance, what's called total and permanent disability insurance.
Yes.
And the other one is income protection. So those are the three main you can potentially have inside your super fund.
Inside your super fund.
Yeah.
So if you consolidate your super, out of that, you could lose those
You could
policies.
potentially lose those. So it's important to know that. And the other one is, unfortunately, because superannuation is such a big system and it's over $3 trillion, the government does like to make changes to it. So there's rules and things that change all the time. So the big thing there is stay informed as much as possible.
Yes.
It's long-term, can't touch it. We've spoken about it already.
Yeah.
But it's just important to know it's yours. And yes, they do sometimes make rule changes, but stay informed as much as possible. So something does change. So the big one is how much money you can put into it usually changes. So it used to be like 20,000, then it was 25, now it's 27.5, 30 at some stage. So you can put in different amounts at different times. So
Each year.
So it's just important to stay informed. And again, knowing that it's your money. It's not the government's.
Duly noted. Thank you, Roscoe.
Thank you, Sneha.